Woo! Cat!
Let's get ready to rumble!
I'm a bad man! I still got the world! I still got the world! My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious.
I feel I'm the best ever. I broke everybody's record. Tell me who record I haven't broke.
Colossal Boxing Talk.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Smooth Cat, Colossal Boxing Talk, as you guys know already. And I'm back with my show, Forgotten Fighters. The fighter I'm going to use today, he's not necessarily forgotten necessarily because, you know, a lot of people, they know who he is, they know about him. But in the era he was in, he was one of those guys who was elite, but he got overlooked by the Big Four. And speaking of Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, Marvin Hagler, and Roberto Duran, the fighter I choose today is Aaron the Hawk Pryor. Born October 20 of 1955 in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was an orthodox fighter. Stood in at 5'6", 69-inch reach. And the next thing, excuse me, but witnessing the human hurricane known as Aaron Pryor, it was the closest thing to seeing Henry Armstrong, because that whirlwind of offense has yet to be duplicated since Aaron Pryor. But with that being said, in his fights, he literally, every fight was very thrilling moment after another. He always had the crowds engaged in the fight, always cheering. The crowds would be cheering and screaming, "Hog time, hog time!" And like I say, overall, Aaron Pryor, he was a very, very great fighter. But he was a beast in the amateur ranks. 204 wins, 16 losses, and his amateur career was culminated as an alternate on the 1976 Olympic team. He turned pro in 1976 at the Olympics and quickly tore through the lightweight and the junior welterweight ranks. Excuse me. He was mowing down seasoned contenders such as Johnny Summerhays, Johnny Copeland, Norman Goins, Alfonso Fraser. His domination of his competition at that time, it earned him a shot against the legendary Colombian champion Antonio Cervantes in August of 1980. Whew. That was a great night in Cincinnati at the Riverfront Coliseum, where Pryor completely dismantled Cervantes in 4 rounds, and his star was then born from there. Okay, now to get back to the amateurs. He had a fight in the amateurs with Thomas the Hitman Hearns, one of the fighters who throughout his career, Tommy Hearns was a guy who Aaron Pryor wanted to fight Tommy Hearns in the pros, but like I said, when they fought in the amateurs, he dominated Tommy Hearns. He brutal. He hit him with a lot of big shots, and I mean, he was 20 years old at the time when him and Tommy Hearns fought. But like I say, it was still a very exciting fight. Aaron Pryor was walking through hell, fire, and brimstones to get to Tommy Hearns, and when he got in, he made Tommy Hearns play, and he ended up winning a wide decision against Tommy Hearns. Okay. But next up for Aaron Pryor, after that win, he I'm gonna skip and fast forward through some things. Okay, but here we go. Pryor, he ended up fighting Alexis Argüello in 1982, and at the time, it was deemed to be a great fight between. It was a fight where he was the underdog. A lot of people felt that Alexis Argüello was gonna stop this young upstart and teach him a lesson or two. And what happened is that fight ended up becoming the fight of the decade. voted by Ring Magazine. Pryor and Argüello, they engaged each other in what was a toe-to-toe brutal brawl, and it went 14 rounds before the great Argüello finally had to succumb to the equally great Aaron Pryor. But that fight wasn't without controversy, because during one of the rounds, when it seems as if Aaron Pryor was kind of losing steam, his trainer at the time, Panama Lewis, he said some words about get the black bottle, the one that I mixed, and he gave that to Pryor, and it looked as if after that, like, Pryor went from what people say as fading to, he went from looking as if he was fading to he came on like a Tasmanian devil, and he was unleashing a very brutal beating on Alexis Argüello. Now, after that, Argüello did ask him directly, did he cheat? He said no, and he told Argüello, I'll give you a rematch, we can do it again. So so they had a rematch the next year, and the rematch was a much easier fight for Aaron Pryor. Honestly, he was unleashing a very brutal beating on Alexis, and he ended up he won his fight much easier than the first fight, and he stopped Alexis Argüello in 10 rounds in this one. But the Hulk, he went on to he defended his title 11 times, and he ended up retiring in 1991 with a record of 39 wins, 1 loss, and 35 wins coming by way of knockout. But as the WBA Junior Welterweight Champion from the year 1980 to 1983, and he held the IBF title from 1983 to 1985. Pryor, in my opinion, he firmly established his place in boxing history. He ended up being inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1996. The International Boxing Hall of Fame in 96, excuse me. And then he was entered into the World Boxing Hall of Fame in 2001. In December 1999, the Associated Press voted Aaron Pryor as the greatest junior welterweight of the century. So that was a very, very huge accomplishment for him, and I do feel he is one of the greatest junior welterweights of all time. But with that said, the thing what affected Aaron Pryor's career, he had a drug addiction, but excuse me, but with that same determination that it took him to be a great fighter, the Hulk, he ended up defeating his habit, and he is now flying high again. Pryor is now living in his hometown of Cincinnati with his wife, Frankie Pryor, and their 4 children. Aaron Pryor Jr., who's a professional fighter himself, Antoine, Stephen, and Elizabeth. Pryor he's an ordained deacon at New Friendship Baptist Church. He travels the world making all type of personal appearances and spreading his anti-drug message to the youth, to older people, to drug users, to people who are in AA, just anyone who he's really changed his life around for the better. And I'm proud of Aaron Pryor, because a lot of people they didn't too much expect him. They thought he was just gonna just perish, and he showcased that warrior spirit that helped him be so successful as a pro to defeat that habit. But also, with that said, excuse me, Aaron Pryor, in his career, he was offered $750,000 to fight Roberto Duran in 1981. But at the time, he was advised by his attorney not to sign for that fight before he had a new contract with a manager. But by the time he got his contract signed, the Duran fight was gone. And they say he also turned down Sugar Ray Leonard fight for $500,000. Okay, in 1982, They Pryor signed to fight Sugar Ray Leonard for $750,000, but Leonard ended up he had a title defense against Roger Stafford. So Pryor came to Buffalo, New York, where they were at fighting, and he began to taunt Sugar Ray Leonard. And then he heard about Sugar Ray Leonard Sugar Ray Leonard had a detached retina, so the fight with Pryor was off. He said, in his exact words, he said, "I pulled off to the side of the road and I immediately began crying." So, like I say, this was a man, a great fighter who was always overlooked. He had 2 epic wars against Alexis Argüello. He was known. He beat a lot of solid fighters. He really did. But his only loss was to, as I mentioned earlier, Bobby Joe Young in a fight that he should have won. But that's when he was kind of in the stages where the drugs were really taking control of him. So, but with that said, I'm glad to see that man turn his life around and things are going up for the better for him. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm not gonna hold this video too much longer. Hopefully you guys hit that like button for me. Leave your comments in the comment section below. I'll get back to you at my earliest convenience. Hit the subscribe button at Colossal Boxing Talk. Keep following us and showing us support. You can go to Facebook, hit the like button at Colossal Boxing Talk. Go to Twitter and Instagram and follow us at Colossal CBT. I am Smooth Cat, and I'm out.
CBT, CBT, CBT. Yeah, we know we knock